There are 5 defendants named in this case, in this indictment. Sam Randazzo was a longtime Columbus attorney who practiced mainly in the energy industry. He had one major client, one major legitimate client, a trade organization comprised of large industrial energy users called IEU Ohio. Members of IEU were companies akin to Timken Steel, the University of Akron, very, very large energy users. Sustainability Funding Alliance of Ohio and IEU Ohio Administration Company, LLC, are also named in this indictment. They are sham companies who had no employees and no clients. They were merely pass-through companies where all income from their activities went back to Sam Randazzo. Charles E. Chuck Jones is the former CEO of FirstEnergy until he was separated or terminated in 2020. He was instrumental in the theft of $4.3 million from FirstEnergy and its shareholders, and the payment of the money to Sam Randazzo in exchange for favorable PUCO actions. Michael Dowling was the Senior Vice President of External Affairs for FirstEnergy and was a key architect of the long-term payments to Sam Randazzo for work done for FirstEnergy and the $4.3 million bribe paid to Sam Randazzo in return for favors. The defendants, as more fully stated in the indictment, constituted a criminal enterprise as defined by Revised Code 2923.31. The enterprise consisted of the individuals mentioned above, as well as the legitimate company FirstEnergy, in addition to the illegitimate companies SFA and Industrial Energy Users Ohio Admin. Sam Randazzo was not the only person who benefited from the conduct found in the enterprise. The defendants, Chuck Jones and Mike Dowling, benefited significantly, and through this organized series of crimes, arranged for FirstEnergy to benefit. While FirstEnergy was benefiting from House Bill 6, FirstEnergy was also a victim of the consistent thefts that was occurring as a result of the defendants' actions. I'm going to focus my comments on the indictment and the stories behind the indictment. We have provided you with what is called a speaking indictment. The indictment tells a story that could be the basis for a fiction novel. Unfortunately for all of us in Ohio, the facts of this case tell the true story of greed and corruption by 3 men and 2 sham organizations. One man, the attorney, bound by both the laws of the state of Ohio and the ethical constraints required in law, and 2 high-ranking officials of a publicly traded company who were expected to act lawfully and ethically in the best interest of their shareholders and their employees. That didn't happen. In 1997, Sam Randazzo formed the trade organization Industrial Energy Users Ohio. The members of this organization were the industrial and commercial companies who consume large amounts of energy. Steel companies, universities, smelters, anyone who used large amounts of energy were allowed to become members. The purpose of the organization was to help these companies join their voice to gain adequate representation. Sam Randazzo was the general counsel of IEU Ohio and was expected to act in the organization's best interest. In 2009, Sam Randazzo filed the Articles of Incorporation for Sustainability Funding Alliance of Ohio. At about the same time, he also filed Articles of Incorporation for IEU Ohio Admin Company, LLC, a company with a very similar name to IEU Ohio. Sam Randazzo, utilizing his sham companies, entered into a large-scale covert operation with FirstEnergy that lasted over a decade. CEO Charles Jones and Senior Vice President of External Affairs Michael Dowling worked with Mr. Randazzo to subvert state government in ways that mightily enriched themselves. Samuel Randazzo has been indicted on 4 counts of theft, money laundering counts, telecommunications fraud counts, 6 counts of tampering with records, and bribery, in where he solicited and or accepted anything of value, in this case money, to corrupt or improperly influence him with respect to the discharge of his duties. Each of the crimes I've mentioned is a crime that serves as a basis for the charge of engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity, more colloquially known as RICO. Mr. Jones and Mr. Dowling have been indicted for bribery, paying Sam Randazzo $4.3 million in 2019 to influence him with respect to the discharge of his duties while serving on the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Mr. Randazzo lobbied on behalf of FirstEnergy and took actions that resulted in benefits for FirstEnergy during the course of his tenure at the PUCO. The grand jury also returned indictments against Mr. Jones and Dowling for counts of telecommunication fraud, money laundering, and theft. Mr. Dowling was also indicted on 2 counts of tampering with records. These crimes also serve as predicates for the RICO charge. Mr. Randazzo's sham companies, SFA and Industrial Energy Users Ohio Admin, were utilized to shield FirstEnergy's payments to Sam Randazzo, as well as to cloud the distribution of settlements belonging to Mr. Randazzo's legitimate client. SFAO had no employees and was solely owned and operated by Sam Randazzo. IEU Ohio Admin was a shell company with a name that was so close to his client's name as to be confusing, most likely deliberately so. Sam Randazzo directed FirstEnergy to deposit money paid to him into these accounts, again to hide the fact that he was receiving money from FirstEnergy. Again, all of the income that went into these accounts was funneled to Sam Randazzo. Mr. Randazzo's thefts were engineered utilizing 2 separate schemes, at the very least. As general counsel for IEU Ohio, Mr. Randazzo kept tight control of the purse strings. He literally controlled every bank account held in his client's name, and he controlled every dollar that ran through those accounts. Since 1997, the members of the legitimate company, IEU Ohio, relied almost exclusively on Mr. Randazzo to represent them in actions in which they were adverse to FirstEnergy. Unfortunately for the unsuspecting and trusting clients, Mr. Randazzo had been covertly working for and with FirstEnergy since at least 2010 and receiving tens of millions of dollars through January 2nd, 2019. At no time did Mr. Randazzo notify his true clients that he was a consultant FirstEnergy, a lobbyist FirstEnergy, or helping FirstEnergy, a party that was adverse to their own best interest. When Mr. Randazzo negotiated a settlement on behalf of his legitimate client, IEU Ohio, the payments were made to SFA instead of the client or to the law firm that employed Mr. Randazzo. Each member of IEU Ohio was to receive settlement monies that were based on a formula. Because Mr. Randazzo had a strict rule that no other member could know what each member was paid, there was no way for the legitimate clients or members of the organization to know if they were being compensated correctly. They could know the total of the settlement that IEU Ohio was to receive, but not how the settlement was paid out to members. The lack of transparency enabled Mr. Randazzo to steal from his clients with little chance of being caught. The first method was the skim. Mr. Randazzo would negotiate a settlement, and instead of making the payment to the client, the payment would be made to the sham organization, SFA. Before forwarding the money on to IEU Ohio and its members, Mr. Randazzo skimmed money from the top and then forwarded the rest to the client. The second method was to insert an anonymous IEU Ohio member into the mix of people getting a settlement amount. Once the settlement was received by IEU Ohio, the legitimate company, he would then personally direct payments to Sustainability Funding Alliance. The members of IEU Ohio had no idea that the anonymous member was their trusted general counsel, Sam Randazzo. Mr. Randazzo used this scheme, in addition to other times, to steal over $1 million, and he put it into his personal Charles Schwab retirement account. These schemes would not have been possible had Mr. Jones and Mr. Dowling not worked in concert with Mr. Randazzo, concealing payments to Mr. Randazzo by paying the sham companies millions of dollars for little or no work. Mr. Randazzo filed dozens of actions against energy companies, but not against FirstEnergy. The ultimate betrayal to his legitimate clients and frankly to the citizens of the state of Ohio was the FirstEnergy payment of $4.3 million to Sam Randazzo as he was angling for an appointment to the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. The money was paid for a purpose: to influence Mr. Randazzo in the exercise of his duties as chair of the PUCO. Mr. Randazzo is also charged with numerous counts of tampering with records. He served on the nominating council for the PUCO for close to a decade before he was appointed to the commission and became chair. As a member of the nominating council, and when he became chair, Mr. Randazzo was required to file the annual Ohio Ethics Commission financial disclosure forms. Noticeably absent from each and every annual disclosure was the income earned from FirstEnergy. And more surprising was the total absence of the $4.3 million payment on January 2nd, 2019 as income, either as a pass-through for one of the sham companies or from FirstEnergy. Additionally, in stunning testimony given to the Ohio House of Representatives Select Committee on Energy Policy and Oversight, Mr. Randazzo, for the record, denied ever representing as a lawyer or as a lobbyist any electric utility regulated by the PUCO or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The evidence will show that FirstEnergy Corp. And/or its subsidiaries and affiliates had paid Mr. Randazzo to lobby both legislative and executive branch officials. As the Attorney General said, there is a tremendous amount of information contained in the indictment. Our task force will continue to work towards justice, continuing to investigate and prosecute the state law claims that have been indicted and that may come up in the future. Thank you.